Hello everybody, my name is Chase here, and I'm hiding right now because I'm currently being robbed. It all happened so fast. They just started breaking in and stealing all my copies of Madagascar. It's kind of ironic though, considering how today started.
Hello everybody, my name is Chase here, and hey, wouldn't it be crazy if I got robbed? Anyway, I'm gonna talk about Mario. Mario. This man has been all over the video game world. Do you think that you can shackle that mustache to just platformers? It's practically written in scripture. As long as there is a face, there shall be a Mario. Half the time I'm playing Call of Duty, I feel like I'm gonna turn around and see him calling in an AC-130. But it's easy to forget that it wasn't always like this. Back in the early 90s, Mario was in 4 games and that was it. And they were all platformers. However, it wouldn't take too long for the floodgates to open wide with the release of Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. Look at that, a previously underappreciated genre that more people are willing to check out because, hey, I know that guy. But once they realized the possibilities of different shit they could put Mario in, there was no closing those gates. Kart racers, puzzle games, fighting games, sports games, whatever the hell this is. He was everywhere. And this was a trend that never really stopped. But what made everybody raise their eyebrows the most was when they decided to put him in RPGs. This idea on paper just doesn't seem like it's gonna work. These games have a very specific appeal. They focus on slow-paced strategy for gameplay and complex plots with heavy amounts of dialogue. On the other hand, gameplay for Mario was purposely made so anybody could understand it just by looking at it. And story is one of the most important parts of a role-playing game, and almost every Mario game can be summarized in one sentence. One word actually, abduction. So it certainly seemed like a weird idea, but the real weird part is that it works so well. RPGs in the Mario universe have proven time and time again to be Nintendo firing on all cylinders, being at their most experimental, most creative, most what Nintendo should be. They told some of the greatest stories in the Mario universe, and to this day are some of my favorite role-playing games of all time. I would even go as far as some of the greatest games ever made. Paper Mario was so beloved by fans with all 3 entries. That they would spawn another spin-off with Mario and Luigi, which managed to get just as big of a following around. And there's only one game we have to thank for all of it. Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars. Very direct title. I'm guessing it was to avoid confusion. I can imagine being a kid in the 90s just wanting to play the latest Mario game and being like, the fuck is this? But no matter how strange it was at the time, Mario's first real adventure into the genre would build up quite the cult following ever since its release in 1996. And I'm not even joking when I say that right in the middle of writing this, the announcement of the remake came in, which caught me completely off guard. I'm honestly still in shock that this even exists. We have been in such legal limbo with Super Mario RPG that I genuinely never thought this would happen, and I underestimated how happy I would be to finally see it. Of all the Mario RPGs, this is the one that deserved the remake treatment the most. It was also the one that needed it the most. So I decided, fuck it, I'm gonna make this the version I primarily focus on. One, because it's a really good remake, and it can give me a direct comparison since I already played the original, and I guess being pretty to look at helps. The original game is using the same pre-rendered style that games like Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct made famous around this time. But while I can't lie and say it doesn't date the visuals a bit, I've always had a soft spot for this kind of art. It's just so specific to this time that I can't help but enjoy it. For like 2 years, these were state-of-the-art graphics. Feels like a snapshot into an era I had no part of. Although it does look a lot better on an old CRT, which of course is how I recommend you play it. I know some people weren't sold on the remake style, but to me, this is how the original would have looked like if it wasn't pre-rendered. And I feel like they managed to take that style even further. I love the new level up screen. Why is everybody so adorable? Every character has a cute little dance. Although big missed opportunity to have Mario go behind the curtain and come out pre-rendered. And they also cut the Bruce Lee line, but that's okay, I'll just cry over here. But why was there so much legal trouble with Super Mario RPG? Why was the remake such a big deal? What the hell was going on behind the scenes? And if you don't think I'm gonna tell you, well, you must be new here. Super Mario RPG would be a collaboration between Nintendo and Square Enix, then known as Squaresoft, the makers of Final Fantasy. Hey, you want to turn Mario into a role-playing game? Who better to leave the task than the company that was batting 1,000 with the genre in this era? And you can tell who made it just by looking at it. Hell, the not-so-secret super boss Kulex just plays the Final Fantasy IV boss theme. Not complaining though, this song is awesome. But Square's involvement with the project meant that both the name Super Mario RPG and all original characters that everybody loves so much belong to Square, not Nintendo. In fact, Paper Mario was originally supposed to be Super Mario RPG 2, but they couldn't call it that. Because of this, we have a shit ton of new guys where this is their only appearance. This licensing issue led many, including myself, to believe that Super Mario RPG would never see the light of day again, which made the remake's announcement all the more
What?
What?
The game opens with our usual Mario swig. Bowser swoops in and kidnaps the princess and Mario gives chase. But I guess Mario had other shit to do that night and needed to get this done ASAP because we skip right to Bowser's doorstep and are facing down with the King of Koopas in a matter of minutes. But before we can celebrate the victory, a giant sword comes out of the clouds with the impact sending Mario far into the distance back to his house. He tries to march his ass right back to the castle, but is greeted by the sword itself, proclaiming ownership over the castle in the name of the Smithy Gang, who intend on this being their first step towards world domination. Seeing no other choice now that the bridge is out, Mario heads back to the Mushroom Kingdom to meet with the Chancellor, where he witnesses a child getting robbed. This is Mallow, a kid who claims to be a tadpole from Tadpole Pond. He's not a tadpole. Mario, being the hero that he is, decides to help Mallow get his grandfather's coin back from Croco, which they succeed. Afterwards, the two decide to meet with Mallow's grandfather, Frog Fuchsius, who tells us a shocking revelation. Mallow isn't a tadpole.
No!
Oh, and your mom and dad are out there somewhere. With his newfound knowledge, Mallow joins Mario in his quest to collect the 7 star pieces. Also for the ride is... well, he's better known as Geno, a magical spirit from Starhaven inhabiting a child's doll, and is easily the most recognizable and beloved character in this game. People are still clamoring to this day for Geno to be in Super Smash Bros., and I have a funny feeling that that sentiment is going to be renewed now with the remake. We don't learn too much about him personality-wise, but he's got a dope design and kind of badass, so I get the hype. And I like the detail that he chose the Geno doll because he thought it looked the strongest. He helps Mario and Mallow retrieve a star piece from this dude named Boyer, a living bow and arrow with arrow minions that paralyze the citizens of the neighboring town. Geno is here to retrieve the star piece Boyer possessed to repair the Star Road, as it was smashed when Smithy took over, meaning that nobody's wishes can come true. And that's a damn shame, because maybe we could have got to see the other Mario brother outside the end credits. Seeing as he and Mario share the same goal, he decides to tag along for the adventure. Also in the fight is Bowser. He's pretty down in the dumps about losing his castle to Smithy and decides to join you to take it back. Well, I guess in his mind you're joining him, and he becomes an active party member to use in battle. The same goes for the princess. She joins your party after saving her from Booster, who might just be the weirdest character in fiction. She doesn't have any real plot significance outside of when you rescue her, but it's so awesome to see her throw hands with frying pans, fans, and worst of all, the back of this hand. And so their adventure takes them all across the Mushroom Kingdom, where they manage to find all 7 star pieces. All 7 star pieces. And they can finally fight their way through Bowser's Keep, smash that dickhead of a sword in the face, and confront Smithy the blacksmith. They of course emerge triumphant and manage to banish Smithy and his minions out of their world, returning peace to the Mushroom Kingdom. Geno gives up the doll form and returns to Starhaven, and we get a parade to commemorate our adventure. I really enjoy how the first part of the remake's credits is styled just like the original, and then transitions into the new one. That's such a nice touch. And also how Mallow, Bowser, and Geno get to join us for the end, where in the original it was just Mario and Peach. This certainly isn't the most complex story for an RPG. Hell, if this were Persona, I'd still be at the prologue. But what makes this story enjoyable is that it's really funny. Super Mario RPG was translated by the legendary Ted Woolsey, who you're probably more familiar with his work on games like Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger. He breathes so much life and humor into this script. But even outside the translation, there's so much fun visual humor that makes almost any interaction with the most unimportant NPCs a good time. And that's where I think the story really shines and makes a pretty predictable plot still incredibly fun and memorable. This is a game that clearly has a lot of fun with itself, taking the piss out of both RPGs as a genre and the Mario series. One of my favorite lines is when you ask this guard toad why he didn't stop Croco from getting away, and he replies, "'Cause I left my bazooka at home." I love all the parts where Mario has to reenact scenes for everybody given he can't speak where he plays every part. Even media outside of this realm isn't safe. We got a parody of the Power Rangers with the Axum Rangers. I can only imagine what it must have been like to be a huge Power Rangers kid in the 90s and then playing this. You can even find both Link and Samus sleeping in some of the inns. It's stuff like this that gives Super Mario RPG almost a celebratory feel for this era, considering it was about to end with the release of the Nintendo 64. I've always found the ending a little anticlimactic. You don't actually get to see Smithy at all until the final boss fight, really building up what he's gonna be like. But then you finally do, and he's just a guy with a hammer. Not much else to say. His boss fight isn't even that hard. This guy ain't no Shadow Queen, that's for damn sure. This game also has some fantastic music. This is easily my favorite soundtrack of the Mario RPGs, with Thousand Year Door coming in a close second. The composer was Yoko Shimomura, who you probably know if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan. I'm not, so this is my only exposure to her work, and it's amazing. I really like the battle and boss themes, even more so in the case of the remake with Yoko coming back. So damn good. In many cases, it's even better than the original tracks. I know when many people think of the Forest Maze song having lyrics, they think of this animation by Christopher Noisy. Not sure how to say that last name, sorry. But the one I remember was actually the thing that made me aware of Super Mario RPG in the first place.
I am in the forest walking around, but my friend Gino cannot be found. I've been looking up and I've been looking down, and there's no sign of that blue-ass clown.
And I totally don't feel old knowing that this video is 12 years old. God damn it.
I got a mushroom. Doo-doo.
The song was also used for one of the levels in Super Mario 64 Star Road. Man, I gotta talk about this thing sometime. Anyway. Mallow, in my opinion, is the most fleshed out character, being the only one to have any sort of arc. It's nothing super complex, but I do love seeing him gain the confidence that he yearns for and fulfilling his desire to meet his real parents. When you get to Nimbus Land, you find out that Mallow is a member of royalty, and a giant bird is impersonating him so a lady named Valentina can become his queen. And after giving her boobs a jiggle... Okay, maybe I didn't have to say it like that. Mallow finally gets to meet his real folks. And it makes me happy because when you visit Star Road, you see that this is his only wish. But in the end, it's something he makes come true. I've actually grown to like Mallow a lot. It definitely helps that he's cute. I want a plushie of this dude so badly. The best thing that comes from Smithy as the main antagonist is that Bowser isn't. And because of that, we get to learn more about him and it's great. I think this is the first time the King of Koopas has ever been playable in anything that wasn't a racing game, and I really like how they characterize him. They show that the brutish attitude is more of a front for his insecurities. This dude cares so much about his image and how other people see him despite nobody thinking much of him to begin with. Almost makes me feel bad for the guy, especially with how upset he is about losing his castle. This is a dynamic that these games need so much more of. Bowser doesn't always need to be the main villain. He's so much more fun when you do more with him. I love this little character moment he gets when you reach Monstro Town, a town inhabited by reformed monsters. He sees one of his former minions living a happy life and even having a family, and instead of being bitter and angry about it like you would expect, Bowser forgives him for going AWOL and wishes him the best. Other than that though, Mario is really just Mario, but I do like how they treat all his other adventures as canon, making him really famous. The only way he can prove he's the real deal is to show off his classic jump. Gino is awesome, but again, we don't learn too much about him and what he's like. He really just wants to fix the Star Road. And Toadstool's significance in the story drops off a cliff after you save her from Booster, even if it's cool just to have her around. But now I'm gonna remind myself that this is a video game and I actually have to play it. The role-playing game genre around this time was still pretty niche outside of Japan. It wouldn't be until Final Fantasy VII would come along a year later and completely change the landscape, making RPGs mainstream. Because of this, Super Mario RPG was decided to be designed with accessibility at the forefront. They knew this was going to be many people's first experience with a role-playing game and wanted something that could teach new players the ropes fairly easily. Thankfully, they actually considered people coming back and made all the tutorials skippable. Thank God. But that's not all. Random encounters aren't a thing in Mario RPG. Enemies can always be seen on the overworld and have to be engaged with to start a battle. This is great. It means I can just flat out ignore them if I don't feel like fighting. And it's made even better by enemies staying dead, making backtracking no sweat off my sack. The world map is structured into levels like a traditional Mario game, making getting lost a problem that simply doesn't exist. If you were worried there would be a lot of unnecessary grinding, don't, because you pretty much never have to grind at all. You can find stars in certain boxes that let you kill anything just by touching them, and you get all the XP you would have got from fighting them. That's amazing. That saves so much time. The only equipment you need to worry about is your weapon, armor, and accessory. I wouldn't even been mad if they took out upgrading your armor altogether. Instead of having a million items to cure different status effects, there's one, and it cures all of them. You don't even need that though. No matter what status effect you're inflicted with, it will be cured as long as you finish the battle. Even death. You gain new abilities simply by leveling up. It does mean that you don't get a lot of customization outside of what characters you bring with you, but it's a battle system that it's incredibly easy to understand and works well. But then there's the battle system itself. Since Square made this, they used the same sort of system they had developed for Final Fantasy. Well, minus the ATB system. Attacks are still turn-based, but there is one thing that certainly changes the battle system from just being Final Fantasy with Mario characters. Timed hits. When you attack an enemy, there's a window in the animation where you can press the button again to do more damage. You can even use this to defend against an enemy's attack to protect yourself, and if you get it frame perfect, you take no damage at all. And timed hits can also be used to get more out of your special moves, making them more powerful, like mashing the attack button or rotating the D-pad. This not only adds interactivity that used to just be selecting actions and watching them play out, but also a skill element that provides some risk versus reward. It's no longer just about selecting the right actions, but making sure you perform the timed hit correctly to maximize its effect. Sure, Mario's super jump is OP, especially later on when it can hit multiple enemies, but do you trust yourself to be able to keep pressing the button to keep the attack going? Later games like Paper Mario would expand this idea considerably and thankfully give you button prompts. But I do like that unlike some of those, timed hits can be done at the start of the game without being told. It means on a replay you can just start doing it right away, and I love shit like that. The remake adds some indicators to help you learn the timing, and I think this is a good addition because it wasn't always clear in the original, with every weapon and attack having a different timing. They don't stay around anyway. After a couple of turns they go away and only come back if you start royally fucking up. I like this addition. Sure, it's making the game easier, but it's also making it more intuitive, which is a good thing. You might have noticed this percentage meter in the corner of the screen. The more timed hits you successfully pull off, the more the meter fills up, and when it's full, you can unleash a super powerful attack that changes depending on which characters you're using, along with a unique pre-rendered cutscene. I was amazed when I saw these for the first time because of how well animated they are. It really adds a lot of spectacle to these fights and incentivizes you to use more characters. I use Bowser and Mallow more here than I ever did in the original because of how good their triple move is. And this is kind of off topic, but some of the status effects are funny to me, especially in the original. Sure, you got your standard poison, but you can also get turned into a scarecrow, mushrooms, really sad. But my favorite is this one where it looks like Mario's preparing to give the singing performance of a lifetime. I also noticed that the Yoshi egg game is way easier in the remake. I picked the right egg basically every time, which is so weird coming off the original where I don't think I got it at all. Trust me, it wasn't for a lack of trying. Give me a fucking break here, guys. Jeez. You get 3 characters to take with you into turn-based battles, but it might as well be 2 choices because you can't switch out Mario. Like, I understand he's the main character and everything, but it kind of limits the flexibility of your team. I would pick him anyway, it just feels like an odd limitation. Thankfully, the remake allows switching characters during combat and doesn't even take up a turn Final Fantasy X style, and when party members die, the ones in reserve automatically take their place. This makes it so I'm always using the different characters even if I didn't immediately choose them, which is a good thing considering the varying usefulness of some of them. Toadstool is without a doubt the best character in the game. For one thing, her healing spell Group Hug heals the entire party to full HP, cures all status effects, costs nothing to use, and most importantly, she starts with it. If she's in the party, you're not losing the battle unless she manages to go down. She can even do some decent physical damage with her bitch slaps and frying pans, which I think are hilarious. Her attack Psych Bomb is also amazing for clearing the room even if it costs a lot. She's got a lot of areas covered, that's for sure, which isn't a good thing for Mallow. He's pretty good in the early game. His physical attacks kinda suck, but his Thunderbolt spell is great for clearing the room when you want to get moving. But he quickly gets outclassed in that field by Geno, and do I even need to say that his healing magic doesn't compare to Toadstool's? He does get a lot better towards the end of the game when you unlock his high-level magic, but that's at the end of the game. I feel like if Mallow had more healing spells, I would have him in my party more often, but the way it is, there are better options. And then there's Geno, my favorite party member. He is this game's equivalent to a black mage, dealing in hard-hitting multi-target magic that does a great job of wiping the floor with groups, and can buff party members with Geno boost, raising their attack and defense if you perform a timed hit. His only drawback is that he's a bit of a glass cannon. It does not take a lot to kill the dude, so you can't be too reckless with him. But that doesn't stop Geno from being an amazing asset against boss fights and when you want to watch those damage numbers fly. And that just leaves Bowser, who gets the least amount of utility. He's got a lot of health and he hits really hard, but that's about it. He gets some cool moves later on, but nothing crazy. There's never an instance where I find myself saying, man, I should have brought Bowser for this. There's not really a lot he can do that Mario or Geno can't. Although I do really enjoy how one of his weapons is just throwing Mario. He can be useful, but only in specific situations. No Luigi is a party member, surprisingly. You would think his inclusion would be a given, but I guess not. You're gonna find that these games aren't gonna be too nice to the Green Machine. But battling is far from the only thing you'll be doing in this game. This might be an RPG, but it's also a Mario RPG. And they've added a lot of variety to overworld exploration. This is where things start becoming more like a traditional Mario game. I'll admit the isometric platforming was kinda awkward on the Super Nintendo. Like, never enough to make me want to crack my controller in half. Well, at least not till the end. But just annoying enough to take note. It's the control. I find it a bit too loose and imprecise. Trying to land on narrow platforms always makes me nervous and something I never look forward to. This is something that I'm glad the remake improved considerably. This alone makes me like the remake more than the original. The control is buttery smooth and I never have trouble landing on things. Well, I said almost. Super Mario RPG sure loves its minigames. Is this where Final Fantasy VII got that? There's riding around in minecarts, barrel jumping, going down a waterfall, and so many others. I'm gonna say that they're all pretty fun, except for the 3-dimensional maze. Not as bad as it was in the original, but it still sucks. The Yoshi race is luckily way easier because they actually give you button prompts. This shit never made any sense to me in the original. You're supposed to alternate between the A and B buttons to the rhythm of the song, but that shit does not fucking work, I swear. I did this shit for like an hour in the original. Thank God for cookies. Just wait until he becomes this guy. The rewards for most of these are coins that you can use to buy items from the shop. You also get frog coins, which you can use to buy new powerful accessories from this dude. I wouldn't say you really need them though. For the most part, this game is a pretty comfortable ride from start to finish, with a few difficulty spikes in between that come a little out of nowhere, usually from the bosses and mini-bosses. If you didn't get Mario's Fire Orb ability before the first fight against Krocko, then you're gonna get dropped. The fight against Yardovich really isn't difficult, it just takes a while and can get kinda dull, especially with them always splitting into different copies. And while I love the reference, the Axum Rangers did not need to be this dickish with the damage and the amount of attacks. But the fight that gave me the most shit wasn't the Axum Rangers, wasn't this big-ass dragon, it wasn't even Smithy himself. It was this random piranha plant. The reason why, it is he has this attack called Petal Blast that deals insane amounts of damage and turns all your party members into mushrooms. And before you even get a chance for it to wear off and get a group hugging, he does it again and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you didn't think the adventure was challenging enough, the post-game bosses that the remake adds might be more up your alley. After you beat the game, you could refight a bunch of bosses again with new gimmicks that make them way fucking harder. Like, damn, okay. I wouldn't call them impossible or anything. Booster's fight is really the only one to make me have to come back for because of that fucking train move. Makes me glad we didn't fight this Wario Land motherfucker in the main game, but all the others do switch up the typical battle mechanics in fun ways, like needing to redirect Punch Leto's bombs back at him or needing to face Johnny one-on-one. I think it's all worth it for the end, the rematch against Kulex. He was an optional super boss in the original that you can unlock after this random little girl gives you a magic orb for some fireworks. What she was doing with this thing I can only imagine. When you enter his domain, you see he's basically a giant homage to Final Fantasy, being a classic non-moving 2D sprite. When you fight him in the remake, he's still a 2D sprite, referencing the original Japanese dialogue that describes how he is a flat plane. And it's so funny seeing that idea still translating with the new graphics. At the same time, I was thinking, man, it would have been so cool to see him in 3D, but that's what the rematch is for. You re-enter his domain to find that Kulex has gained the power of our three-dimensional world, and we can see it firsthand. So awesome, and this is without a doubt the most difficult fight in the game. In fact, I still haven't beat it at the time of recording. I got so close after fighting him for over a half hour just to fuck it up at the end, and I can't lie, that kinda knocked the wind out of my sails. But looking back, I could still count the amount of times I got genuinely frustrated on one hand. Super Mario RPG is a fun, straightforward adventure that's super beginner-friendly, well-paced, and a good length, I find. It's around 15 hours, but that might go up to 20 if it's your first time. If the length of a role-playing game intimidates you, then this is a perfect fit. This is an easy recommendation if you're looking for something more simple to get you familiar with the RPG genre. It's very light on the bullshit, I find. And hey, if you love Mario like I do, that certainly helps. It's packed full of references, humor, and the amount of charm that they managed to cram into this cartridge is really something to be commended. It's honestly better than I remembered playing it again. I used to not really get the hype with the original game. I beat it on the Super Nintendo and never really felt the need to go back to it. But the remake really showed me why Super Mario RPG is so fondly remembered and why it's special. And I can only be forever grateful for its influence on the next two games especially. If it is your first time playing, I do recommend the remake. And if you don't like emulation, take that as financial advice. But it really does manage to do Super Mario RPG justice. And the fact that it exists at all and allows for a new audience to enjoy it is enough for me. And if you do decide to give it a shot, I really do hope you come out of it having enjoyed yourself like I have. But that's all the time I got for today. Now if you'll excuse me, I gotta go figure out how the hell this thing works. Shit, am I getting robbed?